Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 108. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us later today, this Wednesday Steelers Nation emergency episode of the podcast. It may not feel like an emergency to many of the public out there, but to Dave Bryan especially, it's a big-time news. We mentioned it on a previous show. If we got information on the DK Metcalf deal that would change the Steelers' precedent and how they do contracts going forward, we would do a special episode if need be. And here we are. So, Dave, just getting some initial word. Don't know every detail of the Metcalf contract yet, but according to Joel Corry, the first 2 years of that contract, that 5-year, $150 million extension, is fully guaranteed. And for people like you, that is a game changer.
Yeah, I was quite surprised to see that. Once again, all this info comes from Joel Corry, former NFL agent, writes for CBS Sports. If you're not following him on Twitter, you should be at Corry Joel. You've probably heard me reference him a lot during podcasts over the years, and should already be following him by now. Let's start first and foremost about whether or not it's $150 million total value. I think there's still a little uncertainty on this. Was this indeed 4 New Years? That maybe total $120 million with the old money of $18 million tacked on, or is this truly $150 million over a course of the full 5 years? So that's kind of insignificant when it comes to this news overall. As Joel Corry put out on Twitter, DK Metcalf got traditional salary guarantees like TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick. $60 million is fully guaranteed at signing, which is the cash in the first 2 years of the deal. So meaning 2025 and 2026. Now, TJ Watt, back when he signed his extension, got the first 3 years of his deal at signing fully guaranteed. Minkah Fitzpatrick got the first 2 years of his. And we've had all this talk about related to Minkah and Watt. What made them so special was they were top of the market for their position groups at the time of signing, and that was probably the way the Steelers were going to frame things for a little while as to the reasons why they gave fully guaranteed money past the first year of the contract, which makes sense, and you probably took that to get those guys signed. DK Metcalf, if you were to go off of what his presumed new money average is at 30 million, I believe that would make him third, or has he moved down since he even signed this contract? What is
With the Chase deal?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Metcalf was first before Chase, so he should have moved down.
Yeah, I think he's now tied for 5th with Tyreek Hill now at this point, but I think prior to that he was third, because since then didn't Amon-Ra St. Brown and I think Amon-Ra St. Brown and Justin Jefferson signed, right? So those were the two new ones in there. But regardless, at the time of signing for DK Metcalf, he was third on the pecking order as far as APY goes, as far as new money average goes and all. So that brought into the question is, what would the Steelers do as far as guaranteed money when it comes to DK Metcalf, being as he's not the top of the market player for his group? And it seems like we got our answer now when it comes to that. So that is pretty significant overall. We talked about Pandora's box and precedents and all that kind of stuff that goes along with it. Will the Steelers now try to frame it as he was a top 3? I suppose I suppose they could try to draw that line in the sand, but I tell you what, and once again, assuming Joel Corry did not have the rest of the numbers for this contract. I reached out to him specifically and I said, can I get the base salary, signing bonus, and the roster bonuses for the Metcalf deal? And he said, that's all I got from someone who has knowledge about the details of the deal. He said he passed along more details when he gets them. So we're taking Joe Corry at his word and his source at the word that $60 million is the total of cash that DK Metcalf will earn through 2026. When you look at DK Metcalf, his old deal, what you would consider call old money, it was a hair over 18 million. That's what his contract that was traded to the Steelers called for before signing his new deal. So if you were to take $60 million through the first 2 years and subtract a little over 18 million from that, that would make $14 million in new money through the first, what they would call new year of the deal, which is 2026. All of this is pretty significant overall. Now, what will Metcalf's signing bonus be? What will his cap charge for 2025 be? We don't know that yet because we don't have the base salary structure. We don't have the signing bonus structure yet. But if you look back at the kind of a loose layout, or what the actual layout for Minkah Fitzpatrick was a few years ago, even though he was significantly lower new money average of 18.247, he had a cash flow of, through the first year, a little over 22 million, and through 2023 its cash flow was 36 million. 36.6 million, a little bit more than that there. I'm going, it's dangerous to do here, but I'm going to speculate that probably Metcalf was given, I don't know, a signing bonus of somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 30 million for this deal. Give or take, probably a couple of million on either side there, and probably a base salary of, I don't know, 4-5 million, right around in there, which would lead to probably his cap hit. Hopefully coming in around 9 or 10 million, something like that. Now that's just a guess because all we have to work with right now is just a $60 million cash total for the first 2 years through 2026. And then obviously knowing that his old money was a little bit more than 18 million. So, you probably say, man, you guys are nerds breaking, podcast, special edition podcast for this. But once again, and assuming, the Joe Corry report is right, which, I mean, I've done this a long time now, and that guy's on top of things and gives good info there. This is pretty big news from the standpoint that he was not a top of the position player when it comes to market value. And you add on to that the Steelers guaranteed more than just the first year money here. So, in my opinion, that's a pretty big precedent that they broke. But I do kind of wonder how they might try to frame it. And look, this is an outside guy. This was not one of your own either. This was a guy that you traded for, and then bringing in from the outside. You give him an APY of $30 million, and then not only that, you're fully guaranteed the money through the first new year of the deal, which is 2026. So, what does it mean, Alex?
Well, that's a good question for you. What does this mean going forward? I agree. It gets comical if you start drawing lines of, well, if you're not top 3 or you're not top 5, there's a point where you just really can't sell that the way that Pittsburgh could in the past. And so, is the expectation for any sizable money contract going forward, be it extension or outside free agent signing or sign and trade like this deal was, or trade and sign more accurately? Does this now create the expectation for guaranteed money past year 1?
I'll tell you this: if I'm an agent, I'm definitely showing this deal, and saying, how come? Why could you do it for that? And if I'm one of the Steelers' own free agents moving forward, top of the market or near top of the market play. Now, I'm not saying they should do this for a guy's $6 million APY or something, but I'm talking someone that's probably in the top 10 of being top 10 position group, and his APY matching accordingly to that. If I'm an agent now, look, one of the knocks on, there's been 3 franchises that obviously been kind of termed archaic when it comes to guaranteed money, fully guaranteed money. And remember, Alex and I in that show a couple of days ago broke down the different types of guarantees, skill, cap, injury and all like that. But this is being termed by Joe Corry as being fully guaranteed. So, I'm not suggesting once again they do that for average salary players, but for players that are probably in the top 10 of their position group as far as APYs of contracts, I would be twisting the Steelers' arm, because once again you have the Bengals, you have the Packers, and you've had the Steelers have been the three teams that have been trying to hold as close and as long as possible to fully guarantee not fully guaranteed money past the first year. And especially now, we saw the Steelers obviously do it with Minka and TJ Watt, but beyond top of the market value players is kind of what makes this significant. So will we see it? I'll tell you what, I mean, if you get into free agency and you're trying to compete for some of these guys against other teams, that could be a major drawing point for this team if they started fully guaranteeing this stuff. And you even look at the major signing this team had a year ago with Patrick Queen. We talked about, hey, that set an all-time record for an outside free agent for an APY. But when push came to shove and you looked at the contract, only 2024 money was guaranteed. That was the base salary and the signing bonus here. His 2025 money was not fully guaranteed. It was guaranteed, I think Corey said, for injury only. So there is people say you splitting hairs, it's virtually guaranteed. Well, there is a distinction there, So it will be interesting to see how this team moves forward once again with potential like top 10 market value and position players, and maybe guys they trade for or guys that they're trying to sign in free agency.
As you said, though, this really should be viewed in a lot of ways as a good thing that can make Pittsburgh more appealing to free agents and not lose out maybe on key guys over sticking points on guaranteed language. We talked so much early in the offseason, January, February, Dave, about Pittsburgh's need to break some of these precedents that seem to be creating that stagnation for the franchise. And there's always a line to walk between what do you value versus adjusting to the times. But this is a good thing for Pittsburgh to start doing.
I think it is. Now, once again, you probably, you're probably going to want to draw a line of where that's at to some degree. It would be interesting to see moving forward if they try to frame this thing with, well, he's a top 3 player now, but slowly but surely people are going to erode away that line.
To me, it's gone. I mean, obviously,
right.
It's not going to be for every player, but for any big money deal, that's going to be the expectation, I think, going forward.
I mean, if you go into free agency and you want the top defensive tackle or the top edge rusher or whatever, do you think you're going to be able to land that player, even if it's not top of the market value for that player at that position group? Are you going to have a chance at landing him if you're not at least fully guaranteeing the first 2 years of the contract? It's going to be tough because there's going to be competition for you, and there's going to be other teams willing to do that.
Sure, I don't mean to go on a rant in my soapbox here, so I'll just try to make this quick. And it's a long-standing conversation, and Pittsburgh still, to me, is an attractive spot in a couple different ways, but Pittsburgh was losing their selling points. The idea of come here and win and compete for a Super Bowl is hard to believe compared to where it was a decade ago. You can't sell Pittsburgh on the weather. You can't sell them on the taxes. It might be cheaper than, say, California, but PA, Allegheny County, as someone who lives in the county, tax is pretty high here. You can't sell on the facilities because Pittsburgh does not have a great facility, comparatively speaking. We heard Najee Harris kind of imply that recently going to LA. And so if you're going to be uncompetitive at all those levels, you better make it up on the money, which is, of course, a big driving reason for any player to sign. And so this makes Pittsburgh a more competitive team.
Yeah, I think so. And you do kind of wonder, did it ever come out whether or not Metcalf had a no trade clause or not, or that he'd have to, or a team?
I don't believe he did, but I don't think there was any official reporting on that.
Well, also too, you're not going to be able to, unless he agrees to the deal, you're not going to be able to trade him anyway.
Yeah, it's a de facto no trade
Right,
clause.
right. So that that probably played a part in this thing on top. Now, might they try to frame it as, well, we traded for him, so this,
No.
I'm just trying to offer
Mhm.
rebuttals. Not that I agree with them, Alex. You know me. I've been after this team to break some of these precedents for a while, such as this. So, to me, this is good news for the Steelers. It'd just be now interesting to see it moving forward. And are we talking more about these things? These type of deals moving forward here.
Now, the downside to this is you can get burned if there's a player who just blows up and just has a terrible signing, and in year one in, you just realize we made a mistake for whatever reason. And if you've guaranteed that salary second and third year, now you're in trouble trying to offload that contract. So there is a downside to this, but the upside is you can hopefully attract some of these bigger names better than you could before.
Right, and let's say, I mean, you sign a guy to a big deal, like, mega deal such as kind of this, and you did guarantee the first 2 years. I mean, he would really have to tank bad for you to get in a situation, or he'd have to have some sort of legal problem, and even that would probably, the language in his contract, violate his guarantees in that next year. As far as that goes, I'm sure there's language in that. In fact, I posted an old video, or an old but yet kind of recent video of DK Metcalf playing basketball. And Joe Corry retweeted and said, well, if DK Metcalf gets injured playing basketball now, that would void his future guarantees. So
Mhm.
you do have that. So you never go into one of these big deals thinking, oh man, what if this doesn't work out in this first year? The guy falls off the cliff, and well, you shouldn't have. You probably should have thought about all that better before you signed. So really, I mean, you're virtually guaranteeing that you're going to pay that player through the first 2 years anyway. So why not just fully guarantee the deal?
Sure. And it is important to note Pittsburgh apparently only guaranteed the first 2 years as opposed to the first three, because year three, each year you go out, it's a harder projection of will this be the player we think that we're getting? And so that is probably noteworthy. They did three with TJ, they only did two with Minka and also DK Metcalf.
Right. Now, look, the conversation when you get into the Watts and all like that, the Uber guys that reset, other non quarterback APY and all like that. That's probably more when you get into the first 3 years of the deal,
Mhm.
which was obviously the case, and the way they could probably continue to frame that moving forward. But Minka, he didn't reset. The only thing he reset was the safety market. He did not reset highest non-quarterback or highest defensive player or anything, or highest corner, secondary or anything along those lines. So it's easier to draw the line at the 2 year mark, but to me, that's something that the 2 year mark should be seriously considered moving forward with fully guaranteed money.
Let me ask you this, Dave, and I'm at risk of beating a dead horse. So they did it with Metcalf. Why didn't they do it with Justin Fields?
Yeah, that's a great question.
If Metcalf was first. Well, we assume roughly first, right? In terms of, I don't know when the contract to Fields was offered, but it was around the same timetable.
Hmm. I mean, I wish I had the answer for that. I mean, we're going to continue. We're going to be continuing trying to answer that question.
And in Fields, to my correct me if I'm wrong,
It
his deal with
was
the Jets was not fully guaranteed in the second year; it was partially guaranteed. Correct?
right. Let me see if we have details on that.
I know it got reported. It's lost to my head of the last week of just nonstop news. But the Jets, I think, offered $5 million. I want to say base salary guarantee in the second year in
All right, looks
Pittsburgh.
like he got a $15 signing bonus. It looks like only 10 million. Yeah, it was only 10 million of his 20 million base salary in 2026 that was fully guaranteed. So it was a it was a essentially a 2 year, $40 million contract. They included 4 additional void years in there to help with cap purposes, and 20 and 30 million of the 40 million was fully guaranteed at signing.
And we are trusting the report here, and that was not from Joel Corey. That was from Aditi Kinkobala. But the report was Pittsburgh did not offer any fully guaranteed money in the second year.
Right, according to her report.
Right. So assuming that's true, you do wonder why. Previously, you could have sat there and said, "Well, that's precedent. Team not wanting to break precedent. Okay." But now they've broken it with Metcalf. I'm sure they were aware they either were about to do it with Metcalf or were going to do it with Metcalf or had done it with Metcalf before Fields got his offer. And so you wonder why they didn't do it even on a partial basis with
Yeah,
Fields.
it does make you wonder for sure.
But that's not the headline. The headline is the Metcalf contract, what actually happened, and the changes that could happen going forward. So we've seen this team break some pretty incredible precedents. Whether that was, I guess, Queen wasn't necessarily precedent breaking, but history making in terms of outside free agent. The Metcalf trade has really now broken a bunch of precedents, right? In
Right.
terms of average yearly value, in terms of the second year fully guaranteed, just in the actual just nuts and bolts. They just made this blockbuster trade for a wide receiver. So that knocked down some of those dominoes in one move.
Yep, it certainly did. So, and once again, we don't have all the numbers on the DK Metcalf contract, and we are trusting Joel Corry at his word that 60 million fully guaranteed. I DM'd him too. I said, okay, this is the first 2 years fully guaranteed, right? He says yes. So he said he'd pass along the rest of the details for me as soon as he gets some things like the signing bonus. I wouldn't imagine now that if this is fully guaranteed that there will be a roster bonus in 2026 for DK Metcalf. It'll probably be all base salary. I mean, I suppose they could, but I mean, you're fully guaranteeing that money. If you look back to the Minka Fitzpatrick contract, I don't believe they had a roster bonus in there. And if you're worried about super large salary hit with Metcalf, I would imagine that his second year, his 2026 base salary will be well up in the $20 million range. And obviously, for cap purposes, if you need to, he would become the premier target to be restructured, you know, this time next year or on later on into the summers. Should this team run into salary cap needs, you just turn that base salary into a signing bonus and prorate it out. Obviously, they won't do that if he has a serious injury or he's causing problems or he falls off the cliff or anything along those lines. But yeah, I would expect a hefty $20-something million base salary in 2026 for DK Metcalf, with probably the cap charge, I don't know, low 30 million, right around in there. I know people will freak out over that, but the byproduct of this, I think, too, would be DK's Metcalf's 2025 cap number that they acquired from the Seahawks, being a little over 18 million, probably landing around in, I don't know, 9, 10, $11 million range.
All right. So there you go. Big news for Pittsburgh. Now, publicly, will this really impact things? Will you feel the impact of it? No. But for, like you said, cap nerds, as you are especially, this is pretty substantial news.
Yeah, you're a huge nerd if you made it all the way through. What have we done? 30 minutes here?
Just about.
All right. So that's the way it is, as Walter Cronkite would say. So once again, we'll talk more about this on Friday, I'm sure, with some of these initial details surfacing. We're probably not far off from getting all the contract here, and we'll talk about what is and what isn't. And hopefully we're not recanting any of this based on the early reports and all, but that's what we have right now.
All right, Dave, be back on Friday. We'll talk more about the Alabama Pro Day, what Jalen Milroe had to say about his Pro Day dinner with Mike Tomlin, and everything else that happens in Steelers land as quarterback watch continues. But we'll do all that for Friday.
All right. Follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. If you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button, upper right navigational bar, and follow the directions for that. So until Friday, again, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.